What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Guiding Keys, the story of Kingdom Hearts, presented by the Unlockables podcast. As always, I am your host. My name is Eric, and I am your guide on this wonderful adventure that we've been on through the world of Kingdom Hearts and through the mind and creative ambitions of series creator and director Tetsuya Nomura. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in wherever, whenever in time and space you might be located. It means so much to me that you're willing to stop by, check out the show, and see what is going on in the world of video games, or in this case, the world of Kingdom Hearts. I'm pretty sure I've probably said this on every episode so far, but we have a pretty big one for today. And honestly, as I'm recording this, I don't know if this is going to be all in one shot, a one-part episode, or if I'm going to have to divide it into two parts, because Dream Drop Distance gets pretty complicated. Out of all of the games other than Recoded, this was the one that I was dreading doing the most, just because this is where the series kind of starts to get its reputation for being really, really confusing. And some of the elements in the story that I will attempt to explain are things that not even I have a full grasp on how they work or the way they're communicated. So I'm going to do my best job to try and explain how this story works, explain these concepts to you, and I'm relying and drawing on a lot of work that the community has done in understanding these concepts and understanding this game, because the way things are communicated aren't super clear all the time, and a lot of the terms and ideas and story elements that are used cause so much confusion. So I may get some things wrong. There may be people that come along and say he interpreted this wrongly. Like, I'm fully anticipating that, just because this is insane. And I'm standing on the shoulders of giants of the Kingdom Hearts community who have done an incredible job trying to break down this latter half of this arc, because it does get pretty complicated when you're trying to keep all this stuff straight. Who's who, like what's going on. I'll just say it up front. There's some time travel shenanigans that goes on. And whenever you introduce a concept like time travel, it always gets really confusing. So we'll get into all that stuff though. But before we do, like every episode, let's just dive in. Also both intended puns because of Dream Drop Distance. To just some of the introductory information about this game. Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance is an action RPG developed and published by Square Enix for the Nintendo 3DS. This is the 7th installment of the Kingdom Hearts series. Man, we've really done 7 games so far. That's absolutely insane. It was developed for the 3DS after Square saw the 3DS tech and was impressed with it. It is a significant leap forward from its DS counterparts, both the 3DS and the Kingdom Hearts games that were on the DS. It was co-directed by Tetsuya Nomura and his longtime collaborator Tai Yasue. It was written by Masaru Oka and Tetsuya Nomura, and it was composed by Yoko Shimomura, Takeharu Ishimoto, and Tsuyoshi Sekito. Yoko not taking the reins solo for composing this game because she was working on a lot of things at this point in time. She was a freelancer. She was not an official Square Enix employee anymore. She had struck out on her own so that she could do more things. But her and Tetsuya Nomura were really close. They always worked really closely on projects. And of course, she was going to work on any project that he asked her to. So Yoko kind of in charge of this one, but Takeharu Ishimoto and Tsuyoshi Sekito definitely lended their experience to build one of the more unique soundtracks in the Kingdom Hearts games. I really like a lot of the elements in this one. And we'll save talking about some of the music a little bit in the development history. We'll talk a lot more about the music in general when we get to the final game in this series, which is Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, which does have story beats, but is a celebration of all of the music in Kingdom Hearts. So I know I haven't talked a lot about the music in the individual games. I've played some in the backgrounds and such, but when we get to Melody of Memory, the game that celebrates the music of Kingdom Hearts, we'll talk more about the music and how Yoko Shimomura uses the music to tell the story of Kingdom Hearts. Release dates: it was released in Japan on March 29th, 2012, which was one day after the official 10th anniversary of the series. In Europe, it was released on July 20th, 2012. Australia, July 26th, 2012. North America, July 31st, 2012. So North America was actually the last place to get it. And I remember this time period seeing Japan, Europe, and Australia get these games earlier, trying to avoid the spoilers that were coming out because, of course, Kingdom Hearts fans are fanatics. They're going to see the Japanese gameplay. YouTube is more relevant now. Streaming is starting to become more relevant now. They're going to see that and start breaking it down before the game even gets here. So really tried hard to avoid spoilers, which was a little bit easier back in the day because social media hadn't yet evolved into this kind of spoiler type of post everything needs to be updated hype kind of machine that it is today. Dream Drop Distance was meant to serve as the game that preceded Kingdom Hearts 3. So this is the game that directly leads into what would be Kingdom Hearts 3. It offers a glimpse of the direction both in the story-wise and gameplay that would be going into the first numbered Kingdom Hearts title in over a decade. There was an HD remastered version of Dream Drop Distance included in the Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue, alongside 0.2, a fragmentary passage, and a back cover act, which is a movie that recounts the events of the mobile game Union Cross. We'll get into that, don't you worry. This collection was released on the PS4 in January of 2017, 2 years before Kingdom Hearts 3 would be officially released. And I did play the HD remastered version of Dream Drop Distance on my PS5. So that is the way I played this game. I've played it twice through on my 3DS and now twice through on my PlayStation. Review scores. On Metacritic, Dream Drop Distance is sitting at a 75 out of 100. Famitsu gave it a 38 out of 40. Game Informer, an 8.25 out of 10. GameSpot, a 7 out of 10. IGN, 8.5 out of 10. I was not able to nail down specific sales numbers for this game. There were a lot of different numbers thrown around. There were North American numbers thrown around. So I'm not going to put an official number out there. The game was considered a success by Square Enix, but at this time, as we'll see in the development history, there was a lot of stuff happening at Square and in the country of Japan at the time. Yeah, it should be noted that the compilation that contains the HD remaster, so the 2.8 collection, sold over 1 million units. So a lot of people have gotten the chance to get their hands on this game and experience it. The most common refrain I saw from reviewers was that the combat and the gameplay were excellent, but the plot was too confusing and underwhelming to the point of being uninteresting. I have the exact opposite problem of that. I think the plot is so interesting. I don't think it's underwhelming at all. I think it's overwhelming to the point of confusion. I think it has the exact opposite problem of that. Again, I'm not sure how much experience with the series the people who review these games have, but I find this entry fascinating to the point of being overwhelming because it's so complex. Diving into my initial thoughts on Dream Drop Distance, I wanted to kind of get a snapshot first of how the fandom, the Kingdom Hearts community, feels about this game. Out of all of the Kingdom Hearts titles we've done so far, I would say this one is probably the most difficult to pin down in terms of how everyone feels about it overall. Some people say they really like it, with the combat and presentation being fantastic for the 3DS. Others say that the systems and the story were not to their liking. Some people think that it is difficult. It is one of the hardest Kingdom Hearts games, and I agree with this sentiment. There are common refrains that I've seen on whatever Reddit and forum posts that survive to this day, kind of providing a snapshot back to that era in 2012, which, is over a decade ago. So it kind of got to go back a little ways and that's kind of really scary to think about. But these are just some of the general thoughts that I've seen and heard. I wasn't able to really distill one conclusive opinion about this game from reading the thoughts and posts of other community members. So I'm kind of just going off of my personal feelings for this one and telling you guys how I feel about it. And kind of my blanket statement for this game is just off the top of my head. I really love this game a lot. I think it's unique amongst the Kingdom Hearts titles, but I think it suffers under the weight of its own existence because at this point in the story has become so expansive and the things that Nomura is trying to do that this game has so much to set up for Kingdom Hearts 3 now that have the benefit of hindsight, having played Kingdom Hearts 3, looking back to Dream Drop Distance. The things that Dream Drop Distance was trying to do to maneuver the pieces in place so that Nomura could close out this story arc in Kingdom Hearts 3 is monumental. It suffers under the weight of trying to give us a reason for the final conflict in Kingdom Hearts 3. I did play this in 2012 when I was still in college. The month it came out, the day it came out, I had it pre-ordered. I had the special collector's edition, came with a pin. I was really, really excited. And I had found some Kingdom Hearts friends that I had at college at the time, which was a unique situation for me because I never had any like Kingdom Hearts friends, I guess you could say. So it was the first time that I was going to be playing a current Kingdom Hearts title with people around me that were as invested in the story and the games that I was. We had spent months leading up to this, poring over existing trailers, combing over all the cutscenes, reading through all the journal entries from previous games, from final mix versions of the games that weren't out in the West, mind you. We were completely invested in the story. We couldn't wait for the continuation of the story and what we were getting as the inevitable return of Xehanort. I bought a Nintendo 2DS just for this game. And as I mentioned at the top, I've played it twice on the 2DS and twice on console now. So we were ready for this. This is probably, I would say, the moment in which my Kingdom Hearts fandom was probably at its highest. One of the only moments where I was like discovering and sleuthing for things alongside the community, trying to figure out the next set of mysteries that Nomura was going to unveil to us. In terms of gameplay, how put together the game is, I think this is probably the best handheld Kingdom Hearts title of the entire series. It plays a lot faster and smoother than its DS or PSP counterparts just because of the power of the 3DS hardware, and it does a good job of showcasing that enhanced power. And I think the HD remaster is a nice translation to a console experience. So I think they did a good job on that end. There are some technical issues that bother me when it comes to the gameplay. We'll touch more on that in gameplay and presentation, but the command system makes a return where you have a command deck of abilities that you can use that go on cooldown when you use them. A lot of the more powerful and cool commands don't have iframes and have like ridiculously long casting times, like several seconds, making them difficult to use. I'm not quite sure about what a revenge value system in this game looks like, but that long cast time basically makes you a sitting duck. And if you are interrupted in the middle of the cast or in the middle of the spell, it just goes away instantly. So the way the game is set up and the way the AI is set up to like prioritize you when you're casting commands and stuff, I think really disincentivizes you from using the more powerful, more cool commands. And again, we'll go into that in the gameplay when we get there. As I said above, I would probably agree with the general consensus that this is probably the most difficult Kingdom Hearts game as just like on its standard difficulty, not counting super bosses or additional challenges or anything like that in other titles. Yes, in the final mix, Kingdom Hearts 2 is incredibly difficult with the data organization fights and the lingering will. I would say just standard story across the board in just what it presents to you, not any of the secret stuff or extra stuff. This game is probably the most difficult Kingdom Hearts games. There are some fights near the end of the game that are just really, really tough, especially, and spoilers for the next section, the game is split up into Sora's story and Riku's story, similar to Chain of Memories, but not similar. And especially at the end of Riku's portion of gameplay, there is an absolutely grueling boss gauntlet where you have to fight like 5 incredibly tough bosses in the span of like 30 to 40 minutes with no breaks in between or anything like that. So yeah, it is by far probably the most, just at base level, at standard difficulty, most difficult Kingdom Hearts game in the entire series. I can see how people would be frustrated with the story, switching over to the narrative side. Like I said, this game has to set up a lot of moving pieces for the final stretch of the series, and it deals with a lot of obtuse themes. It introduces us to a new realm, the realm of sleep, as well as Dream Eaters and Nightmares are enemy stand-ins for this game. But this new world and how it kind of ties in with the overall Kingdom Hearts universe isn't explained very clearly. It's all very cryptic and meta, and it's split across the concurrent stories of Sora and Riku, and switching back and forth between those, trying to line up the pieces is pretty difficult. And of course, an introduction of a story cliche towards the finale of the game makes the overall lore very confusing when you attempt to lay it on top of the already established Kingdom Hearts cosmology. I would say that this is definitely the game where people started the narrative of Kingdom Hearts plot is so silly, it makes no sense, it's very confusing, and I don't have a response to that because it is. I agree with them. This is one of the most complex stories in video games I've probably ever played in an attempt to understand what is going on. This is my 4th playthrough of the game, and I still struggle with some of the more detailed plot elements. I just don't understand how they fit together. The way things happen, why they happen, which we'll see in the story, is not presented very clearly. All that being said, I do still really love this game. It's still one of my favorite entries in the series, as I've probably said about all of them. I really enjoy the way it plays. Despite the fact that the story is complicated, I do enjoy trying to parse it out and unravel it and just try and understand the confusing story that Nomura has presented to us. I credit Nomura a lot, and I think he gets a lot of hate for the way that he goes about things. But instead of resting on his laurels and giving us like a just standard handheld Kingdom Hearts experience, like he could have just done something like Birth by Sleep or something like that. He used this game to experiment with the gameplay and kind of try some things that he wanted to ultimately incorporate into Kingdom Hearts 3 and give us a new wrinkle to the Kingdom Hearts cosmology. Do I think it stuck the landing? No, I don't think it stuck the landing entirely, and I think that most people would agree with me. That is why I appreciate Nomura as a game designer and storyteller. He's constantly not satisfied with the way that he's done things before. He's always trying to give us new things and give us new ways to experience the story in the world of Kingdom Hearts in ways that not a lot of other game creators have the luxury of doing today. Most games of this scale made today are safer bets to make money. I don't think Nomura's brand of storytelling or experimentation would be allowed really anywhere else. But when you think about it, it kind of makes sense. You have to remember Tetsuya Nomura came up working under Hironobu Sakaguchi, and this is the same kind of attitude that Sakaguchi had when making his Final Fantasy games. He never wanted to do things the same way from game to game. He always wanted to try and experiment and improve and try different things and surprise the player and subvert their expectations with the gameplay, with the story. This is what differentiated Final Fantasy from its competitor at the time, Dragon Quest, which Dragon Quest you could always rely on to be a familiar JRPG experience that brought a lot of the same things forward from game to game, but just did it in a really, really great way. So Nomura is really like that last vestige of Sakaguchi that is left at the entirely corporatized, unrecognizable Square and Square Enix from the 80s and the 90s. He's really kind of the last bastion, the last remaining person at that company that carries forward that spirit of Sakaguchi, even when it doesn't always work, even when the result is something like Dream Drop Distance that is very confusing and very messy. I still appreciate Nomura for what he tries to do and give us a different experience every time, regardless if it's a Kingdom Hearts mobile title, a mainline game, whatever it is he tries to do. My last personal note on this that I have written down, I do have to say, out of all of the Kingdom Hearts titles, this one causes me the most anxiety because there is a system built into the gameplay that is essentially a timer, and it is called the drop system. And games that have timers built in just cause me a lot of stress. It's a reason that I haven't played any of the Pikmins, because just thinking about having to manage everything with Pikmin with a timer really, really stresses me out. And it's the reason that whenever I go and play Majora's Mask, that it makes me even more of a shambling wreck than that story does to begin with. Not only does Majora give me existential crisis, but it also just triggers my anxiety because I know I'm constantly working against the timer. It drives me absolutely nuts. I do not like timer mechanics built into the core gameplay of the games that I play. I do not. It's not that they're bad. It's not that I don't think there are a place for them. It just causes me a lot of stress because I'm very, like, you can even ask my wife about like being on time for things and being meticulous and stuff like that. Like, I don't like to be put against deadlines or against a deadline like I don't feel like I can control. It's very, very stressful. We'll talk about the drop system in the gameplay and presentation. Speaking of gameplay and presentation, let's go talk about that now and talk about the leadoff thing, which is the drop system and the dual stories. Gameplay and presentation. Let's begin with the thing I was just mentioning, my personal thoughts. I'm going to start off talking about the drop system and the dual stories. So, the story of Dream Drop Distance follows Sora and Riku as they undertake a trial to show the Mark of Mastery and be considered true Keyblade Masters. In order to do this, Yensid tasks them with traveling to the sleeping worlds and unlocking 7 sleeping keyholes, releasing them from their slumber. Completing this task, Yensid would consider them true Keyblade Masters, and they would attain the power of waking, which is a power they would need to wake up the hearts of those who were lost and hurting. Do not worry, we will talk more about the power of waking later, maybe part 2 of this episode or at the end of this long part 1. And the power of waking definitely plays a very big part in Kingdom Hearts 3. So do not worry, we will touch on the power of waking more in future episodes. In Dream Drop Distance, you play as both Sora and Riku. They have parallel journeys in the same worlds, and you switch off between them due to a gameplay mechanic called the drop system. It is essentially a meter near your health bar that serves as the timer, counting down until it hits 0, which when it does hit 0, the character you are controlling, either Sora or Riku, will enter a state of sleep, switching you to the character you are not currently playing as. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's kind of annoying. I get it. I agree. I think it's super annoying. I hate timers as much as the next person, but there are a few ways to basically mitigate this mechanic. There is an option in the menu present at all times to manually drop or switch between the other character when you want to. Also, pretty early on in the game, you can get an easily replenishable item called a drop me not, which is essentially a potion that will refill the drop meter. It'll refill the timer, preventing you from timing out and being forced to switch to the other character in a perilous moment. Given that the game gives me ways to control this, the way I played the game is I would play through an entire world as Sora, and then I would manually drop and play the entire world as Riku, playing their stories, basically keeping them side by side at the same pace. I think this is the most cohesive way to experience a pretty complicated plot. All of the threads and forum posts I read said that this was the way that most people played the game when they wanted to try and connect the story, is that they were just going world by world, clearing it as Sora and then clearing it as Riku, kind of keeping their story paths equal as they progressed through the game. Basically what I did was I would do that as early as I possibly could. I would spend all my money. I would just amass a bunch of drop me nots in the first few hours of the game, and I would never have to worry about dropping ever again, except when I wanted to. So that really gave me control back. It's just one extra item I had to buy. Basically, once you have like 50 of them, you'll never have to worry about the drop meter literally ever again. So there is a more chaotic and intense way to play this, and that is just to pretty much live by the will of the drop meter, letting it drop you whenever it runs out, wherever you might be in any given level. This completely changes the flow of the entire game and story, and it just creates a different type of playthrough. The timer will literally force you to switch whenever it runs out in any situation. You could be halfway through an intense boss fight and the timer could drop you, and then you have to start that boss fight all over again. Kind of annoying. Again, I cannot stand timers. Majora's Mask, Pikmin, all these games stress me out. But like those two previous games, there is a connected reason narratively to gameplay as to why it happens. And I do like that a lot. It matches very thematically with the game, as it does in Pikmin and in Majora. Because you're in the realm of sleep, every once in a while Sora and Riku are just going to fall asleep, right? That's basically what the drop meter is. It's like how much time you have before you fall asleep. You're dealing with sleep, dreams, nightmares, stuff like that. So that is the narrative reason that connects to gameplay, which makes me understand what Nomura was trying to do. And we'll actually see in the development history that the Osaka team that made this game was really, really split on this mechanic specifically. And Nomura had to make concessions to get them to implement this into the game because they weren't sold on it. And Nomura wanted to take a risk. Oh, and the drop meter drop, right? So we have Dream in the title, which relates to the sleeping worlds that they're visiting. We have Drop, right? Because of the drop system, Dream Drop. And then Distance is just kind of, they wanted to name it Kingdom Hearts 3D. So we need a third D. There, I guess Distance could refer to like the amount of the time they travel in the sleeping worlds. Maybe, I don't know, but that's why. Next, Diving. Diving replaces the gummy ship sections to enter new worlds. Each new world you select, you have to dive into because you're literally diving into the dreams of the sleeping world to free it from sleep. And this is just like a little like shmups mini game section where you're moving Sora and Riku around as you descend towards the world. There are different objectives for each dive. It could be defeat X number of enemies, collect X number of prizes, finish in X amount of time, defeat the boss before finishing, that sort of thing. You're graded on each dive based on your score, time, completion, all that other kind of stuff on like A, B, C. And I have always sucked at these. I've never gotten good grades on them. I think I get an A like on the first dive, and then on the rest, if I'm lucky, I'll get B's, and the rest are just C's. Like I don't, and I never go back to try and get the better dive grades because I don't care. Like it's just a mechanic to get me into into the world, and I find it less engaging than the gummy ship sections of 2, or even what I think is the ideal gummy ship sections of Kingdom Hearts 3. So that's diving. Now, we have to talk about the most important mechanic in the entire game, the thing that all of Dream Drop Distance is built around, and this is called flow motion. It, like I said, it's the most important mechanic in the game. I would stress that point. It is the mechanic. It is the single most powerful and impactful thing that you can do / master. It is used for traversal and combat, sometimes at the same time. Basically, you'll do either like a dodge or a dash at a wall, a railing, a pole, any surface that you can use flow motion on using the square button. And if you do this, you enter a state of flow motion. When done correctly, Sora and Riku will glow like this pinkish purple color, and they will launch themselves off the wall at like a high speed, or they'll grind down a rail at a high speed, or they'll swing around a pole over and over. And from this point on, you have a couple of options. You can like jump out of a flow motion state to attain a higher, it's just basically like a super jump. You can execute a flow motion attack with X, or you can hit square again on your way to another flow motion surface to stay in flow motion and traverse the map. So think of it like really high speed parkour. Once you master this mechanic, you'll be weaving in flow motion movement and attacks in your standard combat and traversal, like without even thinking about it. It'll become second nature, and its implementation in the game is really good, and it feels like a natural evolution of Kingdom Hearts mechanics. The base combat in Dream Drop Distance, I would say, matches Kingdom Hearts 2 in terms of like speed and intensity, but incorporating flow motion really kicks things up a notch. It's the mechanic. It's so powerful when combined with attacks that you'll want to be doing it constantly. As I mentioned in my personal thoughts, some of the more powerful commands, which we'll talk about commands next, take so long to fire off and are easily interrupted. Flow motion is so fast and very difficult to interrupt. It has priority over almost everything when fighting standard enemies. And while it might not have priority when you're fighting bosses, it's still incredibly useful to close distance and create distance between yourself and a boss during a boss fight. This mechanic would be carried forward, as most things are in Kingdom Hearts. If you notice, the long arc of Kingdom Hearts, we're on the 7th game, and stuff has constantly been like brought forward from Kingdom Hearts 1 all the way to the 7th title, with things changing a little bit. It's been a while since we've had a traditional Magic MP system. Commands have mostly kind of supplanted that, but commands have been around now since Kingdom Hearts 358 days. So they're constantly experimenting with things that worked and didn't work in previous games to try and improve the overall product. So flow motion would return in Kingdom Hearts 3. It is much more diluted down in Kingdom Hearts 3. It isn't nearly as powerful or useful, and we'll examine that when we talk about Kingdom Hearts 3. One of the more interesting consequences of flow motion is the level design. Because of the speed and vertical mobility capabilities of flow motion, the levels got bigger and they got more intricate, with secret areas and vertical perches to accommodate your greatly expanded arsenal of movement options. This is probably the most complex level design that has been in a Kingdom Hearts game up until this point, and it's all thanks to flow motion. Most of the level design in Kingdom Hearts had been like narrow hallways or boxed arenas or areas that kind of like open up, but they're always like self-contained areas. The areas in Dream Drop Distance can scale from more like boxed arenas and hallways to these just massive open areas with tons of high points and hiding spots for treasure chests and things like that. So flow motion greatly increased the size of the level, because while they were making it, they're like, hey, this is fun to use, but the size of the level has to accommodate the enhanced speed and movement. If you're just doing this in like narrow hallways or smaller boxed arenas, it doesn't really make sense. As I mentioned above, commands and the command deck. The command deck makes its return, first debuting in 358 days. It's been a staple in Kingdom Hearts games for like the last 4 titles. Looks to be sticking around here for long term because this is now the 4th straight game that it's been included in. My suspicion is, since all these games were on handheld consoles, was that this was just an easier system to implement than like Magic or MP system, but I digress. The command deck is at its simplest form. In Dream Drop Distance, there's no fusing commands to make new ones. You unlock commands by finding them in chests, leveling up your Dream Eaters, which, again, we'll cover next, and you slot them into your deck and use them with Triangle. Then they go on cooldown until they can be used again. You guys know most of this stuff. They're split into 3 different types. Attack, which is like your Strike Raid, your Sonic Blade, your Sliding Dash, stuff like that. Your Magic, your Faraga, Cura, Sleep, Gravira, all that kind of stuff. And then your items, potions, Drop Me Nots, things of that nature. Again, some of the more powerful commands take up more than 1 slot. And I have some thoughts about the commands here. I appreciate that they're in their simplest form. I didn't particularly like having to experiment and fuse commands together to like figure out what they did. I'm a little bit lukewarm on the experimentation system in Birth by Sleep, having to like fuse them to get your abilities. But this is basically completely removed because the Dream Eaters fill this role in Dream Drop Distance. So commands are like just commands. They're just things to be used for battle. They are a bit unbalanced. Like I said, the cooler, more flashier commands have never been cooler. And there are some like really, really freaking cool ones. But like I said, they take a second or 2 to fire off. And in that time, the game essentially has to move faster because of the implementation of slow motion, and enemies really key in on you when you're not in that flow motion state. So standing there trying to fire off a more powerful command, you're basically going to get targeted and interrupted. And your commands do not appear to have priority. There are some more simple and seemingly innocent ones that go off in an instant and do have priority. And these commands, which are silly and seemingly innocent, are just stupidly powerful. Stupidly powerful. And the one command I'm talking about specifically is known as Balloon. Yes, you heard that right. It's Balloon. The command Balloon. And Balloon is a command that summons a set of balloons around you. In its more powerful iterations, which are, of course, the spell naming convention of Final Fantasy, Balloonra and Balloonga, it basically does the same thing. It summons balloons that will hit the enemy in some way. These balloons are devastating. They are mini nuclear warheads. They're menaces on the battlefield. They do so much damage. Multiple of them come out per cast. They will instantly knock an enemy, even a boss sometimes / most times, out of whatever combo they are doing. If they're approaching you, it'll knock them into the sky. Like, Balloon has priority over basically everything. It is so unbelievably powerful that Balloon by itself changes the tide of some of the more difficult boss fights in the game, just because of the stun factor and the priority factor and just how much damage. One cast of Balloon that encircles you with balloons, I think, puts out like 6 of them, and they're pretty big. So you can just bait the boss into approaching you, and then they just take a bunch of damage when they run in the balloon, and you're able to get some attacks in. Balloonra summons a cluster of balloons that are like seeking heat-sinking cruise missiles that will launch towards the enemy that you're fighting and just devastate like a bar and a half of their health out of nowhere. Balloon is stupid, and it's amazing, and it's so powerful. Put it in your deck. You'd be stupid to not have it in your deck if you're struggling with some of the more difficult fights. Balloon is a command. I switch so many commands in and out of my deck throughout my playthrough trying to find one, but Balloon at least one balloon command was always in my deck at all times, just because it has so much utility on offense, on defense, to get you out of tough situations, to start an encounter with. It's so stupid. So you heard me mention a little earlier, talking about abilities and talking about Dream Eaters. So since we're in the sleeping worlds, dreams are a big concept, right? Heartless and nobodies are not present in Dream Drop Distance, and they are replaced by their sleeping world equivalent. The Dream Eaters, these are beings that, as their name implies, feast on dreams. There are two categories of Dream Eaters. There are malevolent nightmares, which plant bad dreams and are responsible for them. And there are benevolent spirits who consume the bad dreams. Considering that Sora and Riku are on parallel journeys, spirit Dream Eaters end up being your companions. They're your party members, and this is another major mechanic in the game. When you fight and defeat Nightmare Dream Eaters, they sometimes drop fragments, which basically serve as your synthesis materials, and they're named things related to dreams and sleeps like Lofty Figment, Wondrous Fantasy, etc. You then use these pieces to create spirit Dream Eaters of your own, and there are a bunch of them. I'm not even sure how many of them that there are. Each Dream Eater comes with an ability board, which you can spend points they earn in combat to unlock nodes on it. These nodes offer several different things, such as commands, stuff you can add to your command deck, temporary abilities such as Fire Screen, Attack Boost, Defense Boost, and permanent abilities like Leaf Bracer, Combo Plus, Defender, things like that. The standard suite of Kingdom Hearts abilities that you've come to know and love over 7 games so far. So part of the strategy becomes unlocking a lot of Dream Eaters to unlock the permanent abilities you'll need, and mixing and matching them to get temporary abilities that you only get while the Dream Eater is in your party, which you can have up to 3 Dream Eaters at a time in your party, but 2 are active and 1 is kind of in a reserve slot. Or you can just do what I do and just pick your favorites, and that's also a pretty viable strategy. But you'll definitely want to make time to experiment and unlock more of them as you unlock more Dream Eater recipes to get a wide variety of abilities to choose from those different Dream Eaters. Sora and Riku can also link with their Dream Eaters when the link bar fills up. So for Sora, this means pulling off a combo attack with his Dream Eaters. Well, for Riku, he temporarily absorbs his Dream Eaters to enhance his combat abilities. And this kind of highlights in a very subtle gameplay way the 2 different journeys that the boys are on. Sora obviously relies on his bonds with the people around him. So, of course, he would do combo attacks with the Dream Eaters. Riku is kind of more on a solitary journey. He's more like an introspective journey. So, of course, he would use the Dream Eater's power to enhance his own abilities. Kind of a little subtle narrative touch there that's really, really nice. Dream Eaters can permanently die if their health runs out and you don't revive them in time. They'll basically just die and revert back to the pieces that you spent to create them. They are based on real life animals for the most part: eagles, cats, dogs, penguins, bats. And there's actually a system where you can go into the Dream Eater portion of the menu and kind of hang out with them and play with them. The inspiration, which we'll talk about later in the development history, comes from Nintendogs, and they implemented a Nintendog style system where you can interact with your Dream Eaters. You can pet them, you can throw toys at them, play with them, you can throw treats that'll boost their stats and enhance their stats, that sort of thing at them. You can paint them different colors to kind of customize them a little bit. It's an interesting system. It's a little weird, it's a little uncomfortable, and the Dream Eaters have a really funny song, which I'll put in here at some point. And when you hear it, you'll just be like, oh yeah, that's the Dream Eater song for sure. So that's the Dream Eater system. It's interesting. It is probably one of the most unique mechanics in the entire game because it doesn't really return after this. There's not really a customization of party members outside of, in Kingdom Hearts 3, we go back to the standard, Donald and Goofy and the Disney characters are your party members. But this is the one game where it's you can kind of choose and customize your party, and it's a little bit more significant. Since we're talking about gameplay and presentation, I would be probably a bad host if I didn't mention some of the new worlds that got introduced, because for the first time since Birth by Sleep, we're getting some new Disney worlds, some actually ones they've been planning on adding for a long time. So this is probably the most amount of new Disney worlds we've had in a while, and I like most of the new additions. So going down the list here, we have, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher this because I have no basis in other languages. First one is La Cité des Cloches, which is the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I believe that is French for City of Bells, perhaps. We have Prankster's Paradise from Pinocchio making its long-awaited debut after being cut from a couple of games. We have Country of the Musketeers, which is a throwback to an incredible Disney cartoon where Mickey, Donald, and Goofy are the three Musketeers. We have The Grid from the sequel to Tron, which came out around the same time, Tron Legacy, as well as the returning worlds of Destiny Islands, Traverse Town, and The World That Never Was. And we also got a world called Symphony of Sorcery, which is based off of Fantasia and Fantasia 2000. And that world is pretty cool because it incorporates musical scores. It's one of the worlds that Shimomura and her team didn't have to write music for because they incorporated a lot of music from Fantasia. And as you know from Fantasia, they wrote animated pieces to a lot of classical music scores. So it's really cool. Symphony of Sorcery, your hits kind of like turn into percussion hits and instrument notes and stuff like that. It's a really, really cool world. It's definitely probably one of my top favorite worlds in the entire series. So some great additions for new Disney worlds to explore that tie into the story. Okay, I guess. But we'll get more into that because right now we have to check out the development history of Dream Drop Distance. And let me tell you, this game went through some stuff during this period of Square Enix's existence. Before I read my history on the development of this game, I just wanted to, again, shout out where I got a lot of this information from. I have to shout out Georges J. Gruard, who wrote The Legend of Kingdom Hearts Volume 1 creation for 3rd edition's books. It is a very, very thick, beefy book with a lot of information about Square Enix's business dealings around this time, the environment in which the Kingdom Hearts games were created. So a lot of this information is paraphrased from information that Jay put in his book. It's a fantastic book. I please recommend very highly going to check it out. Even if you're not a fan of Kingdom Hearts, I think the insight it provides into Square Enix during the development of Kingdom Hearts and during that rough stretch they had from like 2006 to like the middle 2010s is really, really insightful. It's really, really fascinating. It's a very dense read, but there's so much information in that book that it's absolutely insane. And it touches on a lot of the stuff that was happening with Final Fantasy 13 and Versus 13 and Nomura and all the projects that he was working on and Final Fantasy 14 and just stuff like that. It's super interesting. The Legend of Kingdom Hearts Volume 1 creation by Georges J. Gruard, 3rd edition's books. Go and check it out. It's absolutely incredible. Our development history for Dream Drop Distance actually begins in earnest with Nintendo. On March 23rd, 2010, they announced the development of the Nintendo 3DS, revealing more at E3 later that year. It was announced alongside an impressive slew of first-party titles, including The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword and Donkey Kong Country Returns, and some of the titles included in the 3DS announcement included Metal Gear Solid, Tekken, and of course, a Kingdom Hearts game. It was a bold and aggressive plan for Nintendo, but there was only one problem. They were behind schedule on the development of the 3DS, and they were pretty bad at communicating their status with their third-party developers. Just a month out from E3 and the events around it, Nintendo asked its developers if they had demos ready for their games that could be played at private presentations. Of course, nobody did because of Nintendo's lack of communication, but Square Enix was determined to step up to the challenge. Their reputation had been suffering since 2006. Long-time delays to games like Final Fantasy Versus 13 and Dragon Quest IX had left fans frustrated, and the reception to Final Fantasy 13 in 2009 had not been great, to say the least. This was a chance to right the ship, and Tetsuya Nomura stepped in as he had many times before to try and change the company's trajectory. But there was just one issue. Most of his teams were busy. The younger members of his staff were working on Dissidia, Hand was bogged down with Recoded, and the core Kingdom team was finally working on pre-production for Versus 13 before it vanished. There was only one team he trusted to get the job done, and that was the team out of Osaka, who were currently working on international versions of Birth by Sleep. But he knew they could deliver, so Nomura worked with upper management to get the resources he needed to crank out some sort of demo in time for E3, with himself and Shinji Hashimoto traveling to Osaka to work directly with the team. Hashimoto's presence was crucial to letting everyone know how serious the team was about this Kingdom Hearts title for the 3DS. The team managed to put together a demo in time, but this was just the beginning of the challenges for the Osaka team and Dream Drop Distance. Despite the trust Nomura had in his team at Osaka, they had only ever worked on a DS Nintendo handheld title one time during the mad scramble to finish Recoded. This presented some serious challenges, especially when trying to implement the auto-stereoscopic 3D imaging and plan an entire game with gameplay and environments on a handheld system, while accounting for the added depth of the 3DS. Normal tricks developers use to represent depth, like making things smaller, didn't work in the same way when designing for the 3DS, and it was especially challenging with a brand new, fast-paced mechanic that Dream Drop Distance would become known for, flow motion. Flow motion gave the player so much more control and freedom that level design had to expand to accommodate, and made an already challenging prospect of designing for new hardware and technology even more daunting. Another system that threw the entire team off was the dual storylines of Sora and Riku, and the forced switching between them, which would ultimately become the drop system. Nomura wanted to surprise the player with this concept, and subvert the normal rhythm that Kingdom Hearts games had established over the years. Longtime Nomura friend and collaborator Tai Yasue was especially scared with this concept, but Nomura insisted despite knowing it was a risk. Like Sakaguchi before him, his mentor, Nomura was known to take risks. He wanted to surprise the player and elicit emotions from them, drawing on his experiences of playing games and being at low health in dire situations. A lot of the team was not on board with this idea and even resisted, but Nomura got his way like he always does. In exchange, he offered them a deal. He gave the team free rein to design and integrate the systems that would be used on the lower screen, and offered to give them greater say in what Disney worlds they wanted to see in the game. As development started and the game started to come together, the team began to see and buy into Nomura's vision. Flow motion unlocks so many interesting options for gameplay and design that Yasue began adding even more surfaces to incorporate it, like rails to grind on, poles to spin off of, and more. Flow motion was a natural evolution of Kingdom Hearts' increased pace and movement, and the design had to evolve along with it. They also had an opportunity to incorporate characters from one of Square Enix's most recent games, The World Ends With You. These characters replaced the Final Fantasy characters in the reimagined Traverse Town. The worlds picked by the teams and Nomura also started to become clear. In addition to Traverse Town and The World That Never Was, worlds representing The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Tron Legacy, Fantasia, Pinocchio, and a Mickey Mouse cartoon, The Three Musketeers, were also included in the game. But there was additional pressure on the team outside of the tough development environment. The series' 10th anniversary was just about a year away, and Square Enix really wanted the game to be ready in time for the 10-year celebration. Now, a lot of this game's development history is tied up with the absolute mess that Square Enix as a company was in at the turn of the decade. The launch of Final Fantasy XIV was a disaster, and Yuichi Wada was basically in crisis mode, desperately trying to save his job and appease the Square Enix stockholders and board members. There was a lot of reshuffling, canceling of games, increased management of dev teams and resources, and more pressure than ever for those teams to crank out games as fast as possible. And yet, Nomura and his team trudged on as the game started to come together. The story concepts started to align with the gameplay, Dream Eaters were developed, and a system to interact with them was inspired by Nintendogs. Speaking of dreams, this was the theme that the music of the game started to be composed around. But what about our good friend and legendary composer, Yoko Shimomura? At this point in her career, she was a freelancer, working for herself rather than Square Enix, which meant she was taking on other contracts. In addition to Dream Drop Distance, she was already working with Nomura on the Beleaguered vs. 13, and had already accepted contracts working on other big projects, such as Xenoblade Chronicles. Shimomura is, and always will be, the end-all be-all when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, but it was clear she needed others to help her with the massive workload. She did a lot of the work on Dream Drop Distance, but Takeharu Ishimoto and Tsuyoshi Sekito worked with her to help finish the soundtrack. To capture dreamlike inspirations of the game, she and her collaborators composed the game using triple meter, essentially the time signature of a waltz. This was symbolic all over the place because of the 1-2-3 rhythm of a waltz. The game was in 3D, it was the 3DS, there were 3 Ds in the title. It's all very meta when you think about it. This wasn't especially common these days when composing music, especially for video games, but it was more common in classical music. There were 2 additional challenges that plagued the development of Dream Drop Distance. One, Nomura was having trouble getting approval for all the concepts from Disney. To be clear, the people at Disney still supported him and Kingdom Hearts, but this game was complicated. And the departure of longtime Nomura ally from Disney, Steve Wadsworth, definitely had an effect on the speed of Disney's decision-making. But decisions had to be made. Deadlines were approaching, and the game needed to be dubbed by the English cast of voice actors. What's more, one of the worst natural disasters of the modern age occurred on March 11, 2011. Japan was hit by a magnitude 8.9 earthquake, the worst earthquake in the country's history and the 7th most powerful earthquake ever recorded. Thousands of people lost their lives. Buildings in Tokyo, nearly 230 miles away, shook, and the nuclear power plant at Fukushima suffered a devastating reactor leak, which would go on to be the worst nuclear disaster of the 21st century. Wada later said that the disaster cost Square Enix 570 million yen, which is roughly $4 million in US currency, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing compared to the loss of innocent lives. In the chaos that followed later in 2011, Nomura also suffered 2 rare backstabbings. First, during the disorder that followed the earthquake, Naoki Yoshida swooped in to steal valuable team members working for Nomura and have them assigned to the Final Fantasy XIV rescue project, including Jun Akiyama, who Nomura had to seriously convince to work on the project after Final Fantasy XII, and his VFX director Seunichi Sato. Nomura, usually even-tempered and who took a liking to almost everyone, has apparently held a dislike for Yoshida ever since. It was at this time that Versus 13 really began to struggle, and the specter of Final Fantasy XV was waiting to destroy Nomura's dream project. Disney was particularly alarmed at the struggles of their partner, and even made an attempt to create their own Kingdom Hearts game under Go for Launch Productions. This is a fascinating story, but a lot of evidence of this supposed Kingdom Hearts game is gone. There is some lingering speculation, but perhaps this is a story for another time. The game was entering its final stretch, with additional boss fights and final voice work being completed as close to a month and a half before launch. But somehow, the team managed to get the game out on March 29th, 2012, just in time for the 10th anniversary of Kingdom Hearts. Well, one day after the official anniversary. Work still had to be done on the North American version and all the localization, but Nomura, Tayasue, and the Osaka team had pulled off something absolutely incredible. In the midst of all the chaos of Square Enix, a natural disaster, a betrayal by Yoshi P, and evidence of Disney considering doing a Kingdom Hearts game by itself, they had managed to put Dream Drop Distance together in a little over a year, in time to celebrate a decade of Kingdom Hearts. This era of Square Enix was a mess, and in many ways, Dream Drop Distance bears the scars of these struggles. But it speaks to Nomura's leadership, skill, and the determination of the Osaka team. This game was able to come out under such a tight deadline amidst Square's struggles. So now that we understand the struggles that the Osaka team, Nomura, Tayasue, and everybody went through, making this game specifically, they were still working on a couple of the other Kingdom Hearts titles, but this one, more than all the others, appears to have been significantly impacted by the earthquake, terrible natural disaster that struck Japan, and the sneaky backhanded backstabbings of Yoshi P. And since then, Yoshi P and Nomura, I guess it's probably not very well documented to this day, but it just appears that they are not on the best of terms, although the Kingdom Hearts team did help out with Final Fantasy XVI, whether that was Tayasue or how much Nomura himself was involved with that, I'm not sure. At the time of 16's development, he would have been working on Kingdom Hearts 3, currently working on Kingdom Hearts 4, and the Final Fantasy VII Remake series. So he probably didn't have too much to do with Final Fantasy 16, but Tayasue's Kingdom Hearts team did help out on Final Fantasy 16. Bad blood between Yoshi P and Tetsuya Nomura. Now, we're moving on to the story of Dream Drop Distance, and this is a story that gets complicated, and this part of the episode is the reason why this took me so long. I was having a really hard time. I was trying to write and script out this part and write it in my own words and explain what was happening, and I was really, really struggling to do that and strike a proper balance of how much I needed to include and how much I could just gloss over. And it was a lot. I restarted the script a couple of times. So ultimately, I settled on, I have right now, as of this recording right next to me, the Kingdom Hearts Ultimania, which is the entire story up until Kingdom Hearts 3. So I decided to use what was written in the Ultimania as a framework for the script, and then go through and add in my parts and add in some stuff to kind of enhance upon what the Ultimania touches on, because my goal with this series is to provide you with a understanding of the Kingdom Hearts lore and mythos, and this game in particular is one where that gets very confusing, and we will see here in just a moment. So if you're going along one day and you recognize some words from the Ultimania, I have included that in here. I know plagiarism and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not getting paid for this podcast. I don't make any money off of this. And I did my best to use the Ultimania as a framework and kind of script everything myself and go through and add sentences and things like that. So that's how much trouble I had with this story in particular, because it's still, even after multiple playthroughs, not a story that I understand very well. It's very, very complicated. So let's go ahead and dive into the story. And if you remember, as of Kingdom Hearts Recoded, we were gathering Sora and Riku to Yen Sid's place to have a Mark of Mastery exam to combat the imminent return of Master Xehanort. And this is a story that will touch on the Mark of Mastery exam for Sora and Riku and the ultimate return of Master Xehanort. We know from the secret ending in Recoded the trajectory this story is taking. Yen Sid revealed to us at the conclusion of that game that when a person's heartless and nobody are destroyed, that person would return to the realm of light a complete person. Since they had defeated Xehanort's heartless, Ansem Seeker of Darkness, and his nobody, Xemnas, Yen Sid logically concluded that Master Xehanort's return was all but guaranteed. To combat the imminent threat of Master Xehanort, a new power was needed to protect the realm of light. With a great sense of urgency, Yen Sid sent for Sora and Riku by way of a letter from King Mickey and had them undergo the Mark of Mastery exam to facilitate their growth as Keyblade wielders and allow them to be recognized as Keyblade masters. For their test, they were to dive into the dreams of sleeping worlds that hadn't been released from the darkness a year ago and unlock the sleeping keyholes to help each world revive. Upon the completion of this task, they would have full mastery of using the Keyblade, as well as unlocking the power of waking, an ability to awaken sleeping hearts from their slumber. This was how they could help the people in sorrow and slumber who were discovered previously while investigating Jiminy's journal in Recoded, those hearts that were connected to Sora. We know these individuals to be members of the Wayfinder trio, Ventus, Aqua, and Terra, as well as 2 members of the Sea Salt trio connected to Sora, Roxas and Xion. This was paramount as these individuals would be needed in the upcoming fight against Xehanort and deserved to have their hurts they suffered at his hands healed. To enter the sleeping worlds, Sora and Riku were sent back in time by way of Yen Sid's magic. Time travel, more on this later, and visited Destiny Islands just before they were plunged into darkness and fell asleep. They encountered a phantom of Ursula the Sea Witch and defeated her. The 2 unconsciously unlocked a sleeping keyhole, entering the realm of sleep and heading for new worlds, but not before they sensed the close presence of a man in a light brown robe that was familiar to them. Of course, we know this man in the brown from Kingdom Hearts 1 would eventually turn out to be Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, present on Destiny Islands when they fell to darkness. If Sora and Riku had gone back in time to ride Destiny Islands into the world of sleep, then we know that Ansem was present there as well in the past, just before the islands fell. What was supposed to be a test of Keyblade mastery now seemed much more dangerous. The next thing they knew, Sora and Riku were wearing outfits with strange symbols on them, having been thrown separately into Traverse Town, one of the sleeping worlds. According to Joshua of The World Ends With You fame, the boy who created the town using the dreams of his friends as their world fell into darkness, the place was divided into 2 worlds that looked very much alike, and Sora and Riku had each ended up in a different one. What had once began as a journey together now would continue as a journey separately through the sleeping worlds for Sora and Riku. The sleeping worlds. In these places that had fallen asleep at the point in time when the darkness had engulfed them, the inhabitants didn't know Sora or Riku, but were also inhabited by monsters called Dream Eaters. Sora and Riku continued their journeys apart while making allies of the good Dream Eaters, the spirits, and defeating the bad ones, the nightmares. The exam's assignment, release the sleeping keyholes, was going smoothly, but there was no sign of the 2 being able to join up with each other. Moreover, everywhere they went, a young man in a black coat, as well as other versions of Master Xehanort they once thought they defeated, Ansem Seeker of Darkness and Xemnas, appeared and spoke words with hidden meaning. Sora was treated as an accomplice of Organization 13, with the young man accusing him of being a hypocrite, making his own heart a prison. Riku was surprised and shocked at the presence of Ansem, with Ansem continuing to tempt him with the power of darkness. Sora and Riku continued to go from dream to dream, from world to world, becoming shaken many times and suddenly enticed to sleep over and over again. Around that time, a strange phenomenon was occurring in Ansem the Wise's study in Radiant Garden. Ansem's apprentices, who had once given up their hearts in this place and formed Organization 13, were returning to their human selves one by one. Axel was the first to stir, staring at his appearance in the glass of Ansem's computer room before shifting his gaze to the other former members of Organization 13 who had been recompleted alongside him. Ienzo, Alias, Dylan, and Evan were all present along with Axel. However, the true selves of Xemnas' close associates Xigbar and Cyax, who we know as Bragg and Isa, as well as the true self of the Xehanort-possessed body of Terra that started it all. As they searched the ruined remains of Ansem studies, they were stumped. Axel did multiple sweeps of the castle grounds but failed to locate their missing members. Ienzo tried to make sense of it all as well, but to no avail, when suddenly Axel decided he would take matters into his own hands while looking at the diagram drawn on Ansem's wall that simply read, "Door to Darkness." Back at Yensid's tower, and ignorant of the return of the organization members, King Mickey and the others had been waiting at the mysterious tower for Sora and Riku to return, but they'd received a threatening letter from Maleficent that said she'd kidnapped Queen Minnie, and they were to return to Disney Castle or else. The timing was almost too perfect. Sensing new activity from the forces of darkness, King Mickey, Donald, and Goofy headed out to rescue the Queen and protect their home. There is no way this could be a coincidence, with Yensid concluding that Maleficent must have sensed a change in the tides of darkness, a change that could only be attributed to Xehanort. The Disney crew arrived at Disney Castle to confront Maleficent and Pete, who just wanted all the world's data that King Mickey had obtained when he investigated Jiminy's journal. If you remember from Recoded, this was motivated by a search for an item called the Book of Prophecy. They took Queen Minnie hostage and pressed King Mickey to hand over the data before they would set her free, but suddenly a new player arrived on the scene to shift the balance and tip the scales in the favor of the Disney trio. It was none other than Axel, having used the corridors of darkness to travel to Disney Castle. But he was no longer introducing himself as Axel, but rather the name he had as his human complete form, Lee. Thanks to his last-second intervention, they were able to rescue Minnie and force Maleficent and Pete to retreat. Back at the mysterious tower, King Mickey and the others listened to Lee's story and used that to corroborate their theory about Master Xehanort. The fact that the members of Organization 13, including Lee, had returned to their human forms meant that it was all but certain that Xehanort had already been resurrected and was interfering with Sora and Riku's exam. Some way, he had anticipated this would be their next move and had acted accordingly. To win back initiative from Xehanort, they would have to take some drastic measures to even the odds. Troubled, Yensid agreed to the condition Lee offered in exchange for his help, teaching him to use a Keyblade. Meanwhile, Sora and Riku, still separated, were carrying on with their exam. Riku hit on the idea that maybe a given world was a dream of its counterpart, but he couldn't prove it. Although they couldn't see each other, they worked together by fighting the same enemy in a pincer attack, driving off the power of darkness and unlocking sleeping keyholes. Though the young man in the black coat threatened your abyss awaits, insinuating that Sora would soon fall into the abyss of dreams, but Sora and Riku finally unlocked their 7th keyhole. It was at this time that the gang back at the mysterious tower finally understood how Xehanort could have been one step ahead of them this entire time. King Mickey and the others realized that they had failed to notice a grave fact when they sent Sora and Riku back to Destiny Islands just before its fall. Xehanort's Heartless had been in the Destiny Islands of the past as a figure in the brown robe, and he could have come into contact with Sora and Riku when they went there to start their exam. As an aspect of Xehanort, perhaps this fact could have somehow played into Xehanort's plan, alerting him to their actions. Wasting no more time, King Mickey departed from the mysterious tower to help Sora and Riku, who were seemingly falling right into Xehanort's trap. He followed his connection with their hearts and headed to the realm between, where he sensed Riku's presence faintly lingering. Despite accomplishing the task given to him for the exam, for unknown reasons Sora turned up not at the mysterious tower, but in the world that never was. As though he were in a waking dream, Sora saw figures of people connected to him and grew confused. Changing between his younger form and his Kingdom Hearts 2 form as he drifted in and out of sleep, he met important people that were connected to him. He saw Naminé and a girl he had never recognized before, a girl with black hair and blue eyes that we know as Xion. As Sora grabs her hand as she tries to walk away, a tear inexplicably rolls down his cheek as the memories and feelings of Roxas feel pain inside of him. Roxas, of course, would appear in front of him as well, explaining to Sora that he has so many hearts connected to him and that he has to be the one to save them all.
Come on, wait up! Who are you? You're... Roxas! How can you be here? Am I dreaming? Come on, say something!
This could have been the other way around.
Huh?
But it really has to be you.
What do you mean?
There are so many hearts that are connected to yours. You're me, so you can feel what I felt.
No. Roxas, you're you. We're not the same. I wanted to tell you that you deserve as much as I do to be your own person.
Sora, see? That's why it has to be you.
Sora continued to push on, diving deeper, constantly fleeting between waking reality and dreams. He thinks he spots Riku and Kairi, but as he approaches, they turn into familiar faces, Terra and Aqua, and suddenly memories come flooding back of the time when he and Riku had met them as little kids on Destiny Islands. Sora finally begins to understand just how many hearts are connected to his. Finally, he encounters Xigbar, Xemnas, and the young man, who was revealed to be a young incarnation of Xehanort from the distant past. Then, Xigbar, Xemnas, and the young man in the black coat reveal everything to him. Okay, so I'm breaking the scripted flow because this part was really difficult to summarize as I was writing it. So I'm going to kind of freestyle it and hopefully be able to explain everything to you guys. So here's the events in order as Xigbar reveals them.
Is the organization's world sleeping too? No, it can't be. I know I definitely found the 7 keyholes already. So I've got to be awake again, and in the real world. But why here?
Aw, what's the matter, sleepyhead?
Who's there? Show yourself!
We jumped through a lot of hoops to get you here. But it looks as if it's gonna pay off.
You're part of this?
Hey, let's hit these plot points in order. Sora, Roxas. First, you must be wondering about your revised itinerary. Why am I here, not back home? The answer's simple. We brought you to this place, hijacked your little slumber party before it started, and ever since we've been both your companions and your constant guides.
Before it started? The man in the robe! And so that guy in the black coat! And Xemnas!
Bingo! You were able to go back in time to just before your home became a sleeping world, only because a past version of you already existed there. And I can see, in the past, you already met Mr. Robe Guy. Yep, he was there then to make sure you ended up here now.
That's ridiculous!
It sure is. It's too perfect. Who'd ever believe it? Which is why you idiots never saw it coming. You thought you were off doing some kind of test, right? We'll test this. How come you're wearing the same clothes if you're already back home? You are not gonna wake up, okay? Look, there's no real versus dreams anymore. There's just you, us, and this.
I see. Fair enough. So what? At least I know who to blame for it.
Ooh, I see you still got that angry look down. But here is where I tag out. I got just a few more hoops I gotta jump through.
Huh?
Come with me.
What?
So he first reveals that the man in the brown robe, aka Ansem, Seeker of Darkness from Kingdom Hearts 1, who is an aspect of Xehanort, had indeed been in the past at Destiny Islands when Sora and Riku arrived there to ride that world into the realm of sleep so they could access the sleeping worlds. So because of this, Xigbar, Xemnas, and young Xehanort have been able to keep tabs on him throughout his adventure, making it less of an exam and more of a guided trap, explaining that's why he arrived at the world that never was when his exam was finished. How could they possibly keep tabs on him, I bet you're asking? Well, it's revealed that when Sora and Riku were entering their sleep to enter the sleeping worlds, the Ansem figure in the brown robe marks Sora with what is known in the series and is mentioned by Xemnas in a few minutes. He marks Sora with the recusant's sigil, which is basically, and it's visible on Sora's outfit from Dream Drop Distance. From the moment he enters the sleeping worlds and changes his outfit, there's a big white X marked on his shirt, which doesn't give the player pause right away because a lot of Nomura's designs and costumes have utilized like crossing belt patterns and X's and stuff like that. So it's not immediately clear that this is what happens. But this X, this recusant sigil, the X, which is the symbol of Xehanort, the sigil of Xehanort, allows them to track Sora throughout the sleeping worlds and keep tabs on him. This is why young Xehanort and Xemnas were able to constantly keep showing up where he was, because they knew where he was at all times. I know, a little bit confusing. So this is where the main antagonist that we've been encountering for the entire story, young Xehanort, he takes over the story from here. And young Xehanort is a younger version of Xehanort. He kind of looks like Terra. He has a similar hairstyle. But this is where young Xehanort takes over from here. And he reveals several scenes to him. The first scene we see is the man in the brown robe approaches young Xehanort while he was still on Destiny Islands, who is Ansem. And we've seen this scene of young Xehanort in, I believe, in Birth by Sleep and in Recoded, where he's just saying to himself, this world is just too small, indicating that young Xehanort once came from Destiny Islands.
Yes. This was where it started. At this point, I still had no idea that I was talking to myself. He cast away his bodily form just to set me on the appointed path.
What do you mean?
That is Xehanort, reduced to just a heart. The being you and your friends called Ansem.
Whoa! Him. Is that?
Yes. The point in time that Xigbar mentioned.
Me. Right before my world was swallowed by the darkness.
To move through time, you must leave your body behind. Ansem first sent me on my way, and then placed himself here when the time was right. That is what set all these events in motion.
What are you saying? That he knew everything that would happen?
No, not everything. But remember, Ansem possessed Riku and saw his experiences in real time.
So? That could only tell him so much. How did he know I would be here today?
So it's revealed that the Ansem, the man in the brown robe, is just Xehanort in just heart form. And this is where young Xehanort reveals to us the time travel shenanigans. It was Xehanort's heart traveled back through time. And in order to travel through time in the Kingdom Hearts universe, you have to be just a heart. You have to cast away your bodily form. So Ansem, as just a heart, traveled through time, shared this knowledge with young Xehanort. And again, I'll touch on all the time travel stuff after I finish telling you the story, so just bear with me. He sets young Xehanort on this path through time to dog Sora's adventure and accomplish an ultimate goal. So, meaning that when we encountered the man in the brown robe in Kingdom Hearts 1, it was actually Xehanort in heart form from the future. And you have to remember, his heart eventually took over Riku, used his body, and became the familiar form of Ansem, Seeker of Darkness that we fought in Kingdom Hearts 1. Okay, so we'll touch on all this time travel shenanigans at the end of this, because it's actually a pretty significant part of the plot.
Whoopsie daisy. Wasn't easy putting you into a second sleep, and he almost woke you up.
So then, all that stuff I just saw, did you put that in my head?
No, that wasn't stuff. It was a dream. The falling asleep part was definitely our bad. But we can't put stuff in your head. Hey, I got an idea. Ask your heart. See if it's got a clue.
Well, my heart was aching. That's why I kept going.
Oh, thank you, Sora's heart, for pushing him right into our clutches. Aren't hearts great? Steer us wrong every time.
You know, right? Because you all have hearts. Axel, and Roxas, and Naminé, and that other girl. I felt what Roxas felt. And they laughed together, got mad, and they grieved. You have to have a heart to cry.
Ha! It's about time you noticed.
Indeed. A heart is never lost for good. There may have been variances in our dispositions, but a number of us unquestionably showed signs of a burgeoning replacement. Once born, the heart can also be nurtured. Our experiments creating Heartless were attempts to control the mind and convince it to renounce its sense of self. But understand, one can banish the heart from the body, but the body will try to replace it the first chance it gets, for as many times as it takes. And so I knew, even after we were divided into Heartless and Nobodies, it was just a temporary separation.
Why then? Why did you lie to them and tell them they had no hearts?
Xemnas and Xehanort formed the organization for a specific reason. Round up a bunch of empty husks, hook them up to Kingdom Hearts, then fill them all with the exact same heart and mind. Translation? They were gonna turn all the members into Xehanort.
Make more Xehanorts? You tricked your friends to... But you, aren't you scared of just turning into someone else?
Me? I'm already half Xehanort.
That's nuts!
However, through weakness of body, weakness of will, or weakness of trust, most of the original members we had chosen for the organization were inadequate. Thus, naturally, they never had a chance to attain their goal. Yet, even this was to be expected. We have learned of the heart's folly, and we have achieved our other goals. This last excursion has proven to be a worthy closing assignment for the organization.
Just stop it! You treat people's hearts like bottles on a shelf, but they're not. Hearts are made of the people we meet, and how we feel about them. They're what ties us together even when we're apart. They're what make me strong.
Duh. You're strong because of the ties you have with other people. As if the Keyblade would choose a wimp like you. But no pouting. We see much bigger and better things in your future once you side with us.
I know the Keyblade didn't choose me, and I don't care. I'm proud to be a small part of something bigger. The people it did choose. My friends, they are my power!
Those are just words. You've lost. Fine. See where your power gets you here. Xemnas! He's all yours!
Well, their ultimate goal was to plant fragments of Xehanort's heart in husks without hearts to gather a total of 13 Xehanorts. And Xehanort had chosen Sora as the 13th vessel, and he'd been secretly following the boy since the start of the exam to lure him into sleep. And when you get into a deep enough sleep, sleep has a relationship to death in the Kingdom Hearts universe, and the darkness is very deep there. So if you lure someone into a deep enough sleep, like these worlds, when they're swallowed by darkness, they will not wake up. So they wanted to lure him into a deep enough sleep and trap him there, basically, so then they could turn him into one of Xehanort's vessels. Sora fights back. Sora stood up against them with the power of his bonds, accepting a truth. He knew now that the Keyblade did not choose him. Only because of his bond to Ventus did the Keyblade choose him on that fateful night, because it was only passed on to Riku. But he was happy to be a part of the story of those it did choose through the strength of his bonds. He fights and defeats Xemnas once again, but he didn't have enough strength left to return to his own world. As he called out to Riku, Sora was wrapped in a light he'd experienced as a child and began to fall into the abyss of dreams, the depths of darkness. Young Xehanort appears as Sora sinks into the depths of sleep to explain how were they able to track him. Well, Brownwood Amson, as I said before, marked Sora with an X on his shirt, which is called the Recusant's Sigil.
I know you think you've won, but you lost the moment you dived this far in. You're in the deepest pit of slumber, and you've worn yourself down to nothing. There's no returning to the world above.
What do you mean?
We told you. It was not the sleeping keyholes that guided you. They are not the reason you are here. You've been on a path, one we laid out for you. That sigil on your chest is the proof.
What?
See, that sigil, the X, it tells us where you are at all times. You had wondered aloud before why we kept showing up where you were. It's because we need you, Sora. Or, to be more precise, we need what will be left of you. The 13th Dark Vessel. Why was it assured you would come here today? Because I followed my destined path, and I'm here looking at you right now. You can move through time, but time itself is immovable. Today, all of my selves throughout time were meant to gather here. and to welcome you, Sora, as our 13th member. These facts cannot be changed.
What's gonna happen?
I have now told you all that I know. We are all here, and what the future holds in store is beyond my sight. I will return to my own time and grow into the man who becomes all these others. While I know this future now that I have lived it, returning to my own time will erase the memories and experiences I have gained here. Still, my appointed path is now etched in my heart, which will first lead me to seek the outside world.
Riku.
Your heart will sleep forever in the folds of darkness, and your body will be another vessel for me. So light gives way to darkness. Good night, Sora.
The next question would be, how did young Xehanort know that all of this would come to pass? Because it was destiny. They were standing here today. Young Xehanort explains that you can move through time, but time itself is immovable. Destined events to happen cannot be altered or changed. And this event was destined to happen. That is why young Xehanort was allowed to come here. Young Xehanort was meant to gather different aspects of himself throughout time to this point where they would come together to form the new Organization 13, with Sora serving as the 13th vessel for Xehanort's heart. As Sora sank into darkness, a shining light appeared, one that was familiar to him, the light of Ventus's heart from within him. It enveloped him, wrapping him in Ven's armor as the darkness began to consume him. Meanwhile, Riku had also come to the world that never was and found Sora, who was trapped in a nightmare. As he tried to wake Sora, he fought a fearsome embodiment of the nightmare he was stuck in, and afterwards learned the truth from Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. Riku's whole journey hadn't been through the sleeping worlds, but rather through Sora's dreams. We thought it was a parallel, but it wasn't. At the very beginning of the exam, Riku had noticed that Xehanort was targeting Sora as soon as the brown-robed man had appeared in Destiny Islands. So, Riku unconsciously entered his friend's dreams and consumed his nightmares, attempting to protect Sora from Xehanort's schemes, whether he knew it or not. His jacket of his Dream Drop Distance form even had the Dream Eater logo on the back of it, which is a huge clue that is staring you in the face for the entire game. Even so, he hadn't been able to protect Sora. Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, urged him to set the darkness in his heart free in order to save his friend. But Riku declared that he would make the darkness part of the light, and he defeated Ansem once again. After he escaped from the dream world, Riku finally reached Sora with the guidance of a spirit Dream Eater. Sora's heart had fallen asleep in the darkness, and his body was about to be made into the final vessel for the 13 Xehanorts that compose the real Organization 13. Riku was originally going to be the target, but he had grown to resist the darkness in his travels and struggles. The one who had traveled from the furthest back in time, young Xehanort, summoned the remaining members one by one, different aspects of Xehanort throughout time, that he had gathered to this point. King Mickey rushes in but couldn't stop them despite literally stopping time and trying to rescue Sora. Young Xehanort was able to break free and engage Riku, who was able to fight and defeat him. However, the mastermind, Master Xehanort, resurrected to human form, finally revealed himself. After revealing his scheme to make the 13 darknesses consisting of his incarnations clash with the 7 lights and bring forth the Keyblade for certain this time, Xehanort attempted to fill Sora with his own heart. But in another stroke of perfect timing, this was prevented by Lee, Donald, and Goofy, people that Xehanort hadn't foreseen interfering. After failing to make Sora into his vessel, Xehanort announced the coming decisive battle before departing with his cohorts. Time had run out, and the fated clash would take place at another time. Clearly, this was not the moment that Destiny had intended for Xehanort. Even after he returned to the mysterious tower, Sora was still asleep. Riku used the power of waking he acquired through the exam to dive back into Sora's dreams and attempted to save him from the darkness of sleep, awakening Sora's heart. With knowledge of the danger, Riku dived into Sora's dreams, knowing that the darkest depths awaited him. After Riku arrived in the abyss of his friend's dreams, a figure in jet black armor attacked him. It was, in fact, Sora, wrapped in Ven's armor that had been possessed by a nightmare. When Sora dropped into the abyss of sleep, the armor of the person whose heart he'd given shelter to as a child, Ventus, protected him. However, the armor went berserk after it was possessed by a nightmare, viciously attacking Riku. After destroying the armor, Riku opened Sora's sleeping keyhole and proceeded even deeper into his dreams. Next thing Riku knew, he was back in Destiny Islands, but this time in Sora's dreams. As Riku answered the questions of the people sleeping within Sora, Roxas, Ventus, and Xian, he reaffirmed how important his friend was to him. Insert here, these questions that you get asked, that Riku gets asked, are the same questions that Tidus, Waka, and Selphie ask Sora at the start of Kingdom Hearts 1 when you're going through the awakening there. It's kind of cool, brings like a nice narrative full circle moment, but for Riku this time, because this is a really nice crescendo for Riku's arc here. Finally, he reunites with Ansem the Wise, who he'd once helped when he was known as Diz, saying that it was atonement for involving the others in his own plot for revenge. Ansem the Wise entrusts Riku with a certain object. It contained the results of his research on hearts that he had previously hidden within Sora when he was restoring his memories. He said it might be helpful in getting back the sleeping hearts. After accepting the data, Riku left the world of dreams behind. When Riku returned to the real world, Sora had already woken up. In the midst of the celebration, Yen Sid announced the results of the Market Mastery exam. Although both Sora and Riku were considered worthy of the honor, Riku was the one officially acknowledged as a Keyblade Master this time. Sora was so happy as he congratulated his best friend that it seemed like he was the one who passed. And Lee, who had been watching them, also awakened as a Keyblade wielder, summoning a fiery-looking Keyblade worthy of him. After the commotion had gone on for a time, Sora made a shocking decision. Saying he had some stuff to take care of, Sora used the power of waking to visit Traverse Town again. The Spirit Dream Eaters, his cherished traveling companions who'd helped him on his adventure, were waiting there for him, and he thanked them once again from the bottom of his heart. As the game draws to a close and the credits roll, there's one scene of note that you unlock in the secret movie. In order to fight the 13 darknesses of Xehanort, they will need 7 Keyblade wielders of light. But because Terra, Aqua, and Ventus, and Roxas and Xian are out of reach currently, Yen Sid sends Riku to retrieve someone, and as he returns and steps aside, he reveals none other than Kairi, who is asked by Yen Sid if she knows how to wield a Keyblade. Okay, before I get into the time travel stuff, I want to just talk real quick about the dual storylines of this game, because I think this is really the first game since Chain of Memories that we get to spend any kind of time with Riku. Riku's character development kind of happens as he's a kind of an NPC, kind of happens in-game or while he's in your party. This game, aside from Chain of Memories, is the game where his arc kind of comes full circle. Because remember, we know Riku as this kid from Kingdom Hearts 1 that gave into his selfish ambitions and desires and ultimately paid the price for it, falling into darkness, allowing Ansem to possess his body. And he's been trying to atone for that ever since, and he's been struggling with that darkness that he knows is inside of him. And here it kind of comes full circle. We really see Riku challenge that darkness and that trauma inside of him and overcome it and learn to not fear it anymore and kind of take it into himself. And as he kind of has this moment of self-acceptance and realization that he knows he's not perfect and he knows that this thing is still inside of him, but he accepts it and he lives with it and he chooses to walk a better path. And that ultimately, if you remember from Birth by Sleep, the reason that Terra isn't allowed to be a master is because he gives into the darkness during the exam. And Riku has those same moments, although I would say that this exam is much more intense than the one that Terra and Aqua had to go through. Riku has those same moments that Terra did during his exam. There's a parallel there. And it's even more fitting because Terra was the one to give him the Keyblade. Where Terra failed, Riku ultimately succeeded. He stared down his own darkness and he was able to defeat it. He didn't rely on it. He was able to stare in and not be afraid of it and not let his emotions and his selfish desires control his feelings. And he ultimately, like he said in the game and has said in a couple games, he ultimately walked the path to dawn. And it's a great narrative crescendo for Riku's arc. I will say that this is kind of the high point of Riku's story, is this game right here. And in a way, I think Dream Drop Distance does more for Riku's character than it does for Sora's. In Kingdom Hearts 3, we really focus in on the conclusion of Sora's journey, and Riku kind of plays more of like a minor role. So I think that Riku getting the limelight and getting a chance to shine and succeed in this game is really great for his character. Sora, on the other hand, you know, not since Chain of Memories have we seen Sora in this kind of state, in this kind of danger, really. Normally, Sora's been able to kind of handle whatever anyone's thrown at him with the power of his friends. And the organization in Xehanort, I think this speaks to the level of cunning and the level of threat that Xehanort is as a antagonist in the series. You know, Sora's been able to overcome anything with a smile and with his friends. And in this instance, he's not able to. He defeats Xemnas, which is the final boss of Sora's story, but they catch him in their trap that they laid for him. And if it wasn't for Riku and Mickey and Lee and Donald and Goofy's interference, you know, Sora might have been a vessel. And it's kind of a stroke of genius on Xehanort's part too, because he now knows, he has this knowledge, he's seen it. All of his aspects that have gone up against Sora have been defeated. So in this way, he gets his 13th vessel and he removes Sora, a potentially dangerous piece, from the board to ensure his success. So those are the kind of the thoughts on Sora and Riku's arcs in this game. Maybe I'll do like a whole piece on Riku's story. I don't know, because I think Riku has a more compelling arc overall than Sora, but Sora's still the main character because of his bonds with everybody. But I know this is the question, right? You heard me mention it a couple times. There is now time travel in the Kingdom Hearts universe.
All right, kiddo, tell me, what do you know about time travel?
Less than I should.
Time travel!
To generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity.
1.21 gigawatts! 1.21 gigawatts! Great Scott!
Star Trek, Terminator, Time Cop, Time After Time. Quantum Leap. Wrinkle in Time, Somewhere in Time.
Hot Tub Time Machine.
Hot Tub Time Machine. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Are you seriously telling me that your plan to save the universe is based on Back to the Future?
And time travel is always sticky when you introduce it into a story, because it's can create a lot of paradoxes, a lot of plot holes, a lot of loops very easily, right? I'm not necessarily a fan of it being here, but now knowing that it's integrated into the story, I don't know how the story of Dream Drop Distance or Kingdom Hearts 3 would go if this story wrinkle wasn't involved with it. So I've kind of accepted that it's necessary, but it's still, I don't want to say it's narratively lazy, because Nomura has never been narratively lazy, and some of the games that we love have time travel shenanigans in them. I mean, Final Fantasy 1 began with time travel shenanigans and has time travel shenanigans in them. So it's difficult. It's difficult. But Time travel. Let's talk about time travel. So in the Kingdom Hearts universe, at its base level, it is similar to the way time travel works in some pop culture. You are moving forward along the timeline to experience different points in time, but there are a couple of huge caveats that differentiate it from the way like Back to the Future and a couple of these other ones have utilized it, right? So let's define time travel first. How do you time travel in the Kingdom Hearts universe? So young Xehanort explains this to us when he's monologuing their evil plan in the world that never was. So basically, to time travel, you must cast off your body and spirit and become just a heart. Only by being a heart can you move forward and backwards through time. Whether you extract your own heart and become a heartless or any other way, you must be a heart and only a heart and nothing else. Your heart is the only essence of you that can move forward and backwards on the timeline and go to places. When you become a heart that gains the ability to travel through time, and when you do this, this grants all the other aspects and versions of you throughout time the ability to time travel. But just because you have the power to do it now does not mean that you can just do it. There are two conditions. You must either be only a heart, or you have to have help from the aspect of yourself that is a heart that has the ability to travel through time in order for you yourself to travel through time. Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, is the heartless of Xehanort, Terra's possessed body that has Xehanort's heart in it, who was the apprentice of Ansem the Wise. We know that that aspect of Xehanort willingly removed his heart from his body and became Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, the Heartless, and Xemnas, the Nobody, the leader of Organization 13. The Heartless Ansem aspect of Xehanort was able to go back to the Destiny Islands because young Xehanort as a young man is originally from Destiny Islands. So he was able to go there. He shares the knowledge of time travel with young Xehanort. And when he does this, that is what allows Xehanort, with his body, his heart, his whole being, to move forward through the timeline to where other aspects of himself exist. Then that brown-robed Ansem stays on Destiny Islands until Sora and Riku, the events of Kingdom Hearts 1. And then shortly after Kingdom Hearts 1, Yen Sid uses his magic to send Sora and Riku back to the point where Destiny Islands fell so that they can go into the Sleeping Worlds. But Ansem is there because he just stayed on Destiny Islands until he possessed Riku's body. Okay, next question is, what are the laws and restrictions of time travel in the Kingdom Hearts universe? So time travel does not just allow you to go wherever willy-nilly. It's not like you can just time travel to the past, time travel to any past or anything like that. There are stricter rules on this time travel and other media. So first, I mentioned it in the last section. Time travel is only possible. You're only able to travel through time if there is a version of yourself present at the time you wish to travel to. Meaning that this limits the ability to time travel to basically the span of your life. I was born in 1991. If the rules of Kingdom Hearts time travel applied, I would only be able to go as far back as a heart in 1991. But that would allow all versions of me on the timeline to have the ability to time travel, as long as my being that exists as just the heart assists them in doing so. To get around the time loops and time paradox thing, whereas like you kill your grandfather and then have to be your own grandfather, or like going back in time to kill Hitler or whatever, you are unable to alter the destined flow of events. And we know that destiny is a huge concept in Kingdom Hearts. Events are destined to happen how they will. That is one of the taglines of the series. Destiny is never left to chance. Right? Xehanort says it in this game. And this concept is even more reinforced now that we know that Pete and Maleficent are looking for something called the Book of Prophecies. They're looking for a book that foretells the destined set of events as they are to happen. The laws of Kingdom Hearts will not allow you to go to a point in time and interfere with an event that was meant to happen. This preserves the continuity of the timeline. This prevents like a multiverse branching timeline thing going on, although we will get into different realities by the end of this series, so that'll be fun. Like I said, this prevents things from like people traveling back in time just to like kill someone. Otherwise, like they would just be like, oh, let's go back in time and kill baby Xehanort so they never existed. This one's a little bit confusing. You also aren't able to travel further than the present time, meaning you can't go forward in time because there isn't a future version of you that is there yet. Maybe. So young Xehanort was only able to come as far as the events of Dream Drop Distance because the most future version of Xehanort that was going to exist was going to be recompleted at the end of the game. So that is as far as he was able to go. But it doesn't really matter because even if you could go that far, you cannot alter a future that is meant to happen. You can only go as far as the most future version of yourself, and your ability to time travel is also limited by destiny. So basically, if events are meant to happen, you can't go there because you weren't there. Yeah, I know. It's kind of like a destiny time loop type of thing. Another important caveat is that the person traveling through time that is not in their heart form eventually must return to the time from which they came to live out the destined events of their life. But when you return to your original time, you lose all memories of your experiences time traveling. So you don't remember any of the stuff that you saw, any of the stuff that you experienced. And you're like, well, what use is that? When you return to your original time, although your memories are gone, the experiences are etched on your heart. So it's like your destined path is etched on your heart. And it'll influence you to go in the right direction and take you basically where you need to go. Okay, next question. So how does young Xehanort acquire the ability to time travel? I touched on this a little bit in the previous parts, but this all goes back to Kingdom Hearts 1. The major antagonist, Ansem, Seeker of Darkness, the Heartless of Xehanort, who is the apprentice of Ansem the Wise, who is actually the body of Terra possessed by Master Xehanort's heart. Still with me? Good. That Xehanort, as we know, extracted his heart from his body to form the two beings, Ansem, the antagonist from Kingdom Hearts 1, and Xemnas, leader of Organization 13 in Kingdom Hearts 2. See where I'm going with this. Ansem, Seeker of Darkness was a heart, and only that at that point because Xemnas was the body portion. At that point, he unlocks the ability to time travel, which he does. He goes back to his younger self on Destiny Islands, revealing himself to young Xehanort in the guise of a brown-robed individual. This is where this whole plan forms to make the new Organization 13 based on 13 Xehanorts instead of 13 other random people that they tried to do and failed. His brown-robed form is basically just a guise for his heart. He doesn't have a form yet. He imparts all of the wisdom and the ability to young Xehanort to time travel, fulfilling the assistance requirement of the Kingdom Hearts rules of time travel for people who don't have hearts. And this way, young Xehanort is able to travel through time to anywhere Xehanort has basically been in his life and see all these events. And he's been in a lot of different places, encountered a lot of different people, and he's bringing different aspects or vessels forward in time to form the true Organization 13 made up of just 13 Xehanorts. Now, you may be wondering, at the beginning of the game, Yen Sid uses his magic to make Sora and Riku time travel to the point where Destiny Islands was about to fall, right? Yes, he does do that. And it's not the same thing. And this, I am not particularly sure why. Some of the Reddit boards and forum discussions I've seen researching this topic just kind of accept that Yen Sid is able to do this because magic and because he is literally the embodiment of Disney. So he's just able to do this. But when you think about it, it still obeys the basic rules of time travel we've set out in the previous couple of paragraphs. Sora and Riku could only go back in time to where there was a past version of themselves. There were past versions of themselves on Destiny Islands. Young Xehanort travels without the heart requirement because Ansem helped him. You could also argue that Yen Sid possess the power to time travel and help Sora and Riku to do it. You could also make the argument that Sora and Riku were probably both just hearts at one point. Sora did turn into a Heartless. Riku lost his body to Ansem. So if you twist it and look at it from angle enough, you could say that those requirements are there. And just by slotting in saying that Yen Sid had maybe time traveled at one point, that he helped them time travel, because that's how it works, right? I'm just going through my notes one by one here as I was writing them. I already told you guys who the man in the brown robe was. That was my next question. So what was Xehanort's ultimate plan in Dream Drop Distance, right? So Ansem in the brown robe tasked his younger self, aka young Xehanort, to travel through time and gather up different iterations of Xehanort, or gather up vessels that were willing recipients of Xehanort's heart, and gather them at the time of Master Xehanort's recompletion as a complete person. So if you're only allowed to travel to places where iterations of yourself have been, and time is unalterable because of the force of destiny, this works because, in the simplest bullshit explanation I can give you, this works because it was meant to work. This was destined to happen, so it happens, right? But why all this? Why 13 Xehanorts? Why 13 aspects of himself? Master Xehanort discovers the true way to forge the Keyblade, not the Keyblades that every character has, the ultimate Keyblade, the one that they were going after in Birth by Sleep, the one true Keyblade. During the Keyblade War, the Master Keyblade was shattered into 20 pieces, 7 of light, 13 of darkness. I think you can see where this is going. Xehanort's last plan failed because he tried to forge the Keyblade by pitting one heart of pure light that was Ventus against the pure darkness, the heart of pure darkness that was Vanitas. And this resulted in the unstable Keyblade being created. Ventus actually stopped this from happening. The man in the brown robe, Ansem, marks Sora at the start of their journey because he was on Destiny Islands at that time, which is the X on Sora's shirt. You heard me reference in the story section, known as the recusant's sigil. And thank you to dictionary.com. A recusant is a being or a person who refuses to submit to authority or comply with a regulation, meaning all the aspects of Xehanort could track him through time and sleep because he was marked with Xehanort's sigil, all to lure him so deep into sleep that he could never wake up, losing his heart into the darkness and being able to place a fraction of Xehanort's heart inside Sora, making him the 13th vessel. So if this was the plan, why did they all disappear after failing to make Sora the 13th vessel after Riku and Mickey and Lee save him? Again, the simplest explanation I can give to this that makes sense to me. As Xehanort and young Xehanort said, all of his aspects were gathered there because it was fate. It was the fated time. It was the fated place. That is why young Xehanort was able to travel throughout time, and that is why all the aspects from time were able to gather there. And the reunited, recompleted Master Xehanort is the most future version of himself. Remember what young Xehanort said: when you reach the point where you're supposed to return to your time, you do so, and you grow into the person you're meant to be. The experience is etching a path on your heart for you to follow. It creates this interesting time destiny loop inside of time travel, instead of like a time travel loop paradox. If you time travel forward and return to your time, destiny is etched on your heart, influencing your decisions, but you only time travel forward because of destiny. It's very intense. So if they had succeeded in this moment in making Sora a vessel of Xehanort, then a vessel of Xehanort would have existed. The 13th vessel would have existed at this point in time, potentially allowing them to travel to whenever the next time was to fight the Guardians of Light. Obviously, this didn't work. It was fate that this didn't work. Xehanort accepts that, realizes that, they all fade away. They all go back to their time to live out their life the way they're supposed to. And Xehanort warns of a coming clash. Okay, that's time travel. In like the simplest nutshell I can describe it to you. It's stupid. It's frustrating. It has some wrinkles that make it a little more interesting than like your Back to the Futures or Avengers Endgame or that kind of stuff that included time travel, because it uses the concept of destiny as like a guardrail that you can't alter the way your life is supposed to go. And again, that will be challenged in Kingdom Hearts 3 because some stuff happens that might throw everything we know into whack. This is like the very basics of Kingdom Hearts time travel. This gets expanded upon in Union Cross and in Kingdom Hearts 3. So we'll revisit this, but for now, this is your time travel 101 crash course. I know it is frustrating. It's something I think is cool, but also frustrating at the same time. And I'm not, even after a decade of this game being out, over a decade, I'm not sure how I feel about it. It takes a confusing game with complex lore. And again, up until this point, the lore and the story haven't been that complex if you just pay attention to it. But now it's very, very complicated because you have a very confusing concept in time travel and a very confusing concept in the realms of sleep, like laid on top of each other. And I'm not even going to try and like define the realm of sleep because they're not like actually going to worlds. They're like visiting the world's dreams to like wake them up. And then you're probably like, oh, well, why was there a Traverse Town? Traverse Town isn't a sleeping world. We're going to go off on a Traverse Town tangent. Traverse Town is essentially Kingdom Hearts' version of the Room of Requirement. A Traverse Town will appear to like basically anybody that needs it. If you're like floating in the realm between, if your world's been destroyed, you've just lost your way, a Traverse Town will appear. This goes for the realm of sleep as well. So because of the stuff that happened with the characters from The World Ends With You, when their world got swallowed, like they didn't have anywhere to go. So like a Traverse Town formed in the realm of sleep, basically. So you just think of Traverse Town as like the Room of Requirement. It shows up and it is what somebody needs it to be when they're lost in the realm between. Next, what was the point of all this? Mark of Mastery exam, right? They needed to be Keyblade Masters. This would help grow their powers. The power they really needed to get was the power of waking. And this is another concept that is difficult and stupid because the power of waking ends up being like an ex machina thing that they can just use and be like, oh yeah, this is the power of waking. And it just has so many properties to it. But the power of waking is basically the ability to wake up a sleeping heart and set it free. It has a ton of other applications. We'll look into this in Kingdom Hearts 3 when this concept is expanded upon. And the power of waking can also be used to travel to worlds using connections between hearts. So to help the hearts that are asleep, they need the power of waking. And, you know, Ven is currently asleep at Castle Oblivion. He needs the power to wake his heart up, right? You could also say Roxas and Xian's hearts are in a state of sleep as well, being locked away inside Sora. Sleep is also a concept in Kingdom Hearts that is related closely to death. And this aspect of sleep we'll touch on in Kingdom Hearts 3. And that's where the power of waking starts to become stupid. So just keep that in mind. Just know for now, they need the power of waking to wake up the hearts that Xehanort has effed with and cause all this sorrow. It's basically the tool they'll use to fix all of that. So the next question I have written down. So Riku was in Sora's dreams the whole time. Yes, Riku protected Sora while he was dreaming, while he was adventuring in the dreams of the sleeping worlds. Again, the whole realm of sleep thing is super confusing. I think when you go to a sleeping world, you aren't technically physically in a world. When worlds sleep, they dream of events that happen. And even if people aren't in those worlds, like for example, they visit a Pinocchio world, but Jiminy has been adventuring with them in the realm of light back in the real world. But there is a Jiminy in Pinocchio's world. The dreams fill in the gaps of the people that are missing. When Riku subconsciously sensed that things were going sideways when they were in Destiny Islands and they saw Ansem, he dove into Sora's dreams when Sora dove into the dreams of the sleeping world. So it's like an Inception thing, right? And Riku essentially becomes his Dream Eater, and this is evident by the Dream Eater symbol on the back of his vest. So Sora was in the dreams of the worlds, and Riku was inside Sora's dreams. Again, this is some Inception level shit. The next question I've written down, it says, this is all super confusing. Is it supposed to be? Yes. This is the point where Kingdom Hearts earns its reputation. This game is super confusing. These concepts are super confusing. It really takes some brain power to untangle this mess. And I think this game, like I said, I think this game suffers under the weight of its own, of everything it has to do to set up the finale of the series. And things in cutscenes aren't presented well, and they aren't really clear on the terms they're talking about. Like a lot of the stuff they're just kind of standing around and talking about in like a conceptual way, like it isn't shown. And what you are shown in the cutscenes doesn't really, you're not able to line that up with the concepts that are being talked about in the easiest way and like understand exactly like what that is that's going on. Like it took me 4 playthroughs to understand that destiny was a big part of time travel, and the reason all the Xehanorts leave at the end is because that's like the way it's supposed to happen. It's basically a guardrail to kind of tie that portion of the time travel puzzle together. It took me till this 4th playthrough to like actually sit down and critically think about how all this works, and it's still very confusing. So this is a game that is incredibly confusing, but it has set up the last part of this arc. So there's one point I wanted to make before I can sit here and keep rambling about these confusing topics, but I think in its simplest form, I've given you the tools to kind of understand what's going on. I hope that I have, if you ever get around to playing this game. But this one is rough. Like I told you, I couldn't even script out the story because I didn't know how, because there were dueling protagonist paths, and Riku was inside Sora's dreams and this Inception stuff, and then time travel on top of all of that. So this is basically like Back to the Future meets Inception, and it's a giant mess. But there's one more point I wanted to make in the way that they're setting up Xehanort and the way that Sora continues to be the main protagonist, right? So what is it about Xehanort that makes him the antagonist, that makes him this villainous force, right? We've kind of talked about this before. And in this game, it's really brought to light the one point that I've really seized on thinking about Xehanort as a character and thinking about Sora as a character, is that Xehanort is Sora's ideal opposite. He's the polar opposite. He's the complete opposite. He could not be any more opposite if he wanted to. And what do I mean by that? So listen to my spiel that I've written here. Dream Drop Distance sets up Xehanort as this polar opposite figure of Sora. He's the other side of the coin. He's a force that holds ideals that fly in the face of everything that Sora knows and believes in. Think about what Sora stands for. He values friendship. He values his bonds with his friends. He knows that that's what gives him strength. He even says so much in this game when Xigbar finally tells him the Keyblade didn't choose you, and he says, I don't care. I'm happy to be a part of the people's lives who it did actually choose. This is the power that gives him strength, and has been able to, the strength of his heart and the strength of his bonds with other people, more than his own physical prowess, more than the Keyblade. He has always relied on the strength of his connection, more than his own physical strength, more than the Keyblade. He's always relied on the strength that his connection with others has given him. My friends are my power, right? That's Sora's that's his mantra. I know we laugh at it, but that literally defines who Sora is as a character. And through all the hardship that he goes through, he never wavers from his belief in his bond with his friends. Xehanort is the complete opposite. He severs all connections between himself and others. In his travels in the worlds, Yensid tells us an interesting story at the start of Dream Drop Distance. He says that Xehanort used to be a master, but he gave up the title of master and chose the Seeker's life, which is a Keyblade wielder that basically wanders the worlds. In his travels, he sees terrible things. He sees unspeakable darkness. He sees worlds not worth saving. And rather than working alongside others, people he would have bonds with, to fix this problem, he ultimately concludes that he and only he can save the world and make things right. So he doesn't rely on friends or bonds or connections with people. He trusts himself and only himself to fix this problem. So much so that he trusts only in himself that he makes 13 of him in order to bring about his plan to forge the Keyblade. He would rather have 13 of himself than trust in the bonds of other people to help change the world. He believes that he alone can do it to such an extent that he's willing to break his heart into multiple pieces, into 13 pieces, to accomplish his goal. And I think that is the ultimate sadness, ultimate tragedy of Master Xehanort as an antagonist, and just the ultimate mockery of the world and the story and the morals of Kingdom Hearts. That makes him such a great antagonist because his goals and ambitions and the way he sets about doing things fly in the face of everything that Kingdom Hearts has taught us. And that's why I love him so much as a villain. So, with these lingering plot threads, what now? Where do we stand? What's going on? What happens next? The pieces are pretty much in place for a final confrontation. Xehanort plans to have a final clash between the 13 versions of himself and the 7 Guardians of Light to form the Master Keyblade, to summon Kingdom Hearts and remake the world. The true organization will form sometime in the future to fight this conflict. Meanwhile, this leaves Sora, Riku, and Mickey in a conundrum. They are the only Guardians of Light currently. Aqua, Terra, and Ven are out of the picture right now, as are Roxas and Xion. Their 7th has yet to reveal themselves. Lee is still training. Riku is seemingly bringing Kairi into the picture to train, but we don't know if she'll be ready. And this is why Sora needed the power of waking to save them. Unfortunately, Sora failed the Mark of Mastery exam, and his encounter left him weakened once again, so that we're able to level him up in Kingdom Hearts 3. How super convenient. He does not have the power of waking, so that is where he stands. Sora needs to find this power of waking. He needs to restore Aqua, Terra, Ventus, Roxas, and Xion. And like I said, much to our surprise, Axel, who is now Lee, and Kairi appear to ready to begin Keyblade training. So this is where Sora's part of the story stays until Kingdom Hearts 3. We have a couple more titles to go through before we get to Kingdom Hearts 3. Next on the docket will be Kingdom Hearts 0.2 Birth by Sleep, A Fragmentary Passage, and we'll be spending a little bit of time with a character that is familiar to us. This tells us a little bit more of the story of Birth by Sleep, the events leading up directly to Kingdom Hearts 1, so that'll be interesting. And this game serves as a little bit of a tech demo, a little bit of a teaser to Kingdom Hearts 3. We have the mobile game to touch on, Kingdom Hearts Unchained X Union Cross, that has kind of like changed names a couple times, and I'll have to figure out how I'm going to name that episode, as well as the movie that covers the events of this game, Back Cover X. So we have those 2 episodes to go, and then we'll finally be able to talk about Kingdom Hearts 3. I'd say we're in the final stretch of the Guiding Key series. We have Kingdom Hearts 0.2, Union Cross, Kingdom Hearts 3, Dark Road, and Melody of Memories. So I would say we're getting there. It's pretty close. I will probably do something a little bit different with these games going forward. So the episode order will probably be Kingdom Hearts 0.2, Birth by Sleep, A Fragmentary Passage. Then we'll probably do part 1 of the mobile game of Union Cross, because that covers the events of the ancient Keyblade War, and some of the stuff in that ties into Kingdom Hearts 3. And then the second half of that game will probably be, then we'll do Kingdom Hearts 3. Then we'll do the second half of the mobile game of Union Cross, because the second part of that game deals with a lot of stuff setting up for like the end of Kingdom Hearts 3 and Kingdom Hearts 4, I'm imagining. And then we'll cover Dark Road. and then we'll wrap the series up with Melody of Memories. So yeah, we're getting pretty close, and it's kind of hard to believe. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself when this series is over. But for now, that's where we've left off. Sora has gone off by himself to kind of hang out with his Dream Eater friends and just take some time to himself. And now we have to prepare for the coming conflict with Master Xehanort. But we have some truths to be revealed in 0.2. And we'll finally learn the history of the ancient Keyblade War and the Age of Fairy Tales when we start talking about the mobile game. And there's a lot to cover with that. So got some big games coming, and then we'll finally be able to cover Kingdom Hearts 3 plus the Remind DLC. And if you believe it or not, that'll only be my second playthrough of that game ever. I played it in 2019, and I didn't go back to it because I was satisfied with the way the game ended, and I kind of thought that was going to be my conclusion with Kingdom Hearts as a series, and I still feel, and now here I am all these years later doing a complete series playthrough and podcasting about it and getting ready for Kingdom Hearts 4. So yeah, we're going to keep going, but that is going to do it all for this episode. I hope you've been able to hang with me. Thank you so much. I know this was a longer one. I know we talked about a lot of heavy topics. If you want to talk to me more, you can find all my socials at linktr.ee/Unlockables podcast. You can join the Discord. We have a shrine to our Lord and Savior Nomura, where we discuss Nomura and Kingdom Hearts things. You can tweet at me, find me on Instagram, all that fun stuff. I have a couple short form TikTok videos where I talk about Kingdom Hearts stuff. Might start doing more at that. Don't know, but all of it's in the link tree that's in the description in the episode notes, I believe. And again, thank you to J. Gruard, who wrote an incredible book, The Legend of Kingdom Hearts Ultimania, where I got a lot of this information from. It's only getting more complicated, and I'm trying to do my best to keep all the plot threads together, even though they're getting harder to hang on to. So with that, I'll leave you guys with the customary outros. It's not just the story of video games. It is the story of you, and may your heart be your guiding key.